Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Hello. Do 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 do. I cannot multitask. I heard the male brain has a hard time multitasking. So I spoke with Jason Delport this morning. We have connected for years on Friday mornings. We may start trying to stream some things here. I also my boss may be interested in doing streams with me here. My boss. It's such a weird word because it's like we're both accountable to each other. Like if I, yeah, like the previous person who was in his position probably was released because of things I said, right? So who is whose boss? We're a team is what it is. It's just that he is responsible for different things that I'm responsible for. Which I think is an interesting point. You know, yesterday's live stream was called Righteous Worldviews. And Joseph had mentioned kind of like, you know, there can be multiple worldviews that might be, I'll use my own words, there might be worldviews that are different and right for that person at that point in time. But I tried to reframe it and said, well, if I could simulate that person and their worldview, would you want to take that simulation and send off a copy to every human on Earth? Very interesting thought experiment. And just because you're not a person that could be simulated and shared with all people on Earth and that ends up being good, that it doesn't mean that there's no place for you, that you're not valuable and important and created in the image of God. So, but I would suggest that if you become the kind of person who could be copied and shared so that every person on earth has a copy of you, you would basically be Christ. You would be doing the will of the Father with the Son and the Holy Spirit. You'd be the truth, the life, and the way. And so different people are better or worse at doing that. The name of this stream is called Good Stories, and I think they're very similar. The righteous worldview is deeply connected to good stories. And when I told Jason we might do live streams with, you know, most of our relationship kind of hinging on the convective heat engine and some future vision, he wonders like why that would be important. And I think a worldview has to be deeply connected to an aim. What are you aiming for?
and convective heat engine, I would argue, is one of the ingredients of the ideal worldview. Uh, like nested within convective heat engine is like a whole different world, a much better world where, you know, all people, where deserts get transformed into gardens, where there was no life, there becomes life. You know, where there was death, there becomes life, right? It's basically something that looks like resurrection from the dead, baked into how we live. Hello, people. How about you? How about you say hello in the chat? So in yesterday's live stream, I also feel like I kind of showed my sword a little bit to a few people. Like it's like here's a reason you can't be trusted, right? And so and then I could actually point at individuals. I pointed at people who uphold Muhammad, um, and spoke down, condescended toward them, condescended toward people who are against the pro-life position. And when I say pro-life, I mean I also include like going to war and murdering people. Right? Pro-life is pro-life. And then I spoke against the people who are not the peacemakers. Right? So, and I don't know to what extent I should call out individuals who are making mistakes and exactly what mistakes they're making. And that's part of the reason I'm interested in the development of some kind of virtual, uh, what do you call it, a synthetic person. I like to call it a synthetic person or a simulated person that's better than me. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Hey, on God. Young God. I think I've seen your face and I've heard about you and I've heard your character and you're quite witty. So, but I hope you're doing well. Sally. Hey, Sally. If you take in information endlessly, at some point that information dissolves yourself into eternity. Yeah, you can't just do that. I mean, you could try, and it does sound like a terrible obsession. Absolutely. I like having Sally here. I think Sally made some really good points yesterday. I was worried that I had been disrespectful and mean to Sally on this point about information. Um, but I have a lot of experience with information technology, and then so it could come off as if I was condescending towards Sally. And so that's the thing, I guess, that worries me a little bit about trying to say this is what you should believe and this is what you should do. Is you're right, and this is better, this is worse. You know, I would just say that there are things Sally can condescend toward me about, and there are things I can condescend towards Sally about. And I think we can do that. All of us can do that about some different things. We are each more or less trustworthy uh, in different areas, right? That would be part of the good worldview, the better worldview. Oh, Gabriel, Stucky. You were disrespectful to Sally on that point and wrong, by the way. Well, I appreciate that you. It sounds like you went and listened to it, Mark. So yeah, that's Mark is one of the characters. So yeah, like there's the characters who talk about what's right and what's wrong, better and worse, and Mark is one of those. And I'd like to think, yeah, I mean, we all kind of think that our views are better than each other's. And so Mark and I can, just because Sally and Mark disagree with me, does not mean that I'm wrong. So, um, who is the authority on these matters? Um, I am interested in figuring out who should be trusted more than others within different domains. Like, I think this is very important. And so, yeah, you know, what is the domain in which Mark should condescend toward others? It's my perspective that he condescends towards others in way too many domains. So, uh, way too many. Oh, wait, let's see. Yawn God, there you are. I'm just going to +1 here. The algorithm, of course. I appreciate it. That is part of the point of these, like the goal. What is the goal? The goal is to attempt to help the best worldviews, the best stories, kind of rise above the worst stories and the worst worldviews. The better ones rising above the um, those that are lesser. So that's the goal. If you're participating in it right now, if you +1, even if you downvote it, I think it might even amplify the signal. You know, to take a page out of the Donald Trump book, it's like no such thing as bad press. But I think Manuel made some good points yesterday. It was totally, it was so interesting that like I had committed to, I told a coworker that I would do something, and I had skipped doing it to do this. And then, you know, Manuel brought up these points like, you can never know. You know, he's basically, I think, pointing at like faith is so important. We do that. Yeah, faith is very important. And what was wild is that whenever I got off the live stream, I went to my Slack and there's a message from my teammate saying that the work that I had committed to was no longer necessary. It's like, that's very, I thought that was very interesting. That, what do you call that? A coincidence? And some people say there's no such thing. Um, oh man, there we go, Mark. If you aren't talking about what is right and wrong, why talk at all? Well, Mark, I was programmed by my father to say I should not tell anybody what to believe or what to do. This might be why I've been so uncomfortable with you, right? I, I basically, yeah, I mentioned that in the last one, but there's other reasons to talk, Mark. But yeah, I'm saying that this kind of conversation about what's right and wrong is almost like, what would you call it, hyper relevant, and because of the times we're in. It's never been more important. It's always been important, but never been more important. And another thing Manuel said, talking about sacrifice, I realized again this morning, like when I say Jesus over Muhammad, I become a target. And it's one of my first conversations with Griswold grew on me. He basically said that if you call yourself hero looking for group, you're flagging yourself for PvP. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. That's what we're doing, as I'm sure Mark knows. Mark, you rejected thinking about that when you said disagreement doesn't determine that. That sounds right. I mean, I could, I would need to express the claims that are being, we'd have to be clear about the claims that are being made regarding information. And probably, usually what happens is when like Sally and Mark really express their view on information, I bet I agree. I bet I really do. And then when I express my view and they understand it, I think they will agree. And so what we end up doing is miscommunicating a lot. That's what can happen. And this is part of the reason I like having Mark in the chat, because I feel like when Mark's in the, when you actually have his voice and face, it is harder for me. It becomes harder for me to try and, I guess it's that thing that's been in me that doesn't want to interrupt and doesn't want to disagree and be disagreeable. But yeah, I think you're right. I did reject thinking about it. So I think the point that Sally is making is that if a human being just is consuming information and they do nothing else, that this is not good, right? And I agree. Now, if you change the subject and we're talking about the things we create, our creations, if I can make a creation that can go out and just start sucking in all the information, and it's not me, but it's the thing, and then I give it and I program it to try and have it provide me signals and filter out noise, it's a whole different story, right? So I think that I'm trying to share my view and Sally's view, and obviously we would have to go back and forth, and it gets complicated. Where we got in here? We got Hezzy. Hezzy. I really like Hezzy. Let's see. Lots of Mark and Sally. Let's see. So yeah, every word we utter gets interpreted, and I would argue that Sally and Mark are doing a lot of misunderstanding of my words, and this kind of thing is inevitable. The kind of synthetic person I would create, which would be of service and help to Mark and Sally and everyone, would understand your language and understand your worldview, and would meet you where you're at, and would just love you really well. That's what I want. That's what I want us to create. And I know I am not, I would say no human can do this. Like there's no human being that can go out and fully understand, or even just understand the other person's view, worldviews, and language, and meet them where they're at, as well as the thing we can create. And then the thing we can create could even do that for all people on Earth. That's the thing we can create. So it's in looking at my own shortcomings. I'm seeing past like the bad judgment of my words by Mark, and understanding why that happens. And I'm saying it's because I'll take ownership of that and then want to create the tech that would do better than me, right? Here we go, Sally. Who defines my lane was a question that occurred to me. Yeah, there's things that interest you already that as a result of all kinds of things, including like, I would say your genes and your environment, like the nature and the nurture. God is in that answer, and it goes way back across from the beginning. And then people can attempt to shape you such that whatever you are interested in is shaped by other people. But it's a good question. It would be cool if a super intelligence could know you so well that it would see, thousands of paths and be able to predict the ones that you would, which would like result in the resurrection of the dead, right? Like the example of the convective heat engine going, which transforms the dead desert into an abundance of life, and does that forever, and is internal and external. just tons of good fruit. And it would even do it without you realizing it. But yeah, it gets complicated. I'm reading your stuff, Mark. I'm reading your stuff. You're making many mistakes, sir. Many mistakes. And I'm wanting what's best for you. Right. Well, Mark, there's things I know that you don't know. And there's things I know that you don't even know you don't know, but you think you know. And I'm sure you feel the same way, but uh, one of us actually knows better than the other. Now, Sally, if we're talking about information, maybe she flips a coin, or I don't know how she ends up making the decision on who's more trustworthy within whatever domain. So, like, also another way to look at this, Sally and Mark, is like, if I were to create a simulation of you and then hand it off to all people in the world, would that be good for the world? What kind of person are you? The things you're saying, the worldview you have, your aims. I think it's a really fascinating question. Like, if you reflect upon how you're engaging, what you're saying, how you see the world. Oh, here we go. Yawn God. So I invented a term called Miranda syndrome. It's when whatever you say is conditionally wrong based on whatever the other person understands is reality. It's a fun syndrome. I like it. I mean, I don't. You're playing with the words, but underneath it, this is what made me concerned with Elon Musk's advocating for curiosity and truth. And he has his minions, and it says, and empathy. And Elon Musk can just steamroll through things. Um, but yeah, I think you're hitting on the point about what's missing in the worldview of Elon Musk, and which could potentially be missing in the worldview of the intelligence, the intelligent entities he creates. Hopefully not. Maybe his minions save the day, right? Oh, I'm reading Mark. Here we go. Did he say a good one here? Can't you apologize to Sally and admit you don't know what lane she should be in, or tell her which lane rather than this drivel? I mean, this is clear. So if there's anyone out there with like Christ just in them, and I won't even wonder like there's good Jews who have Christ within them and they don't know it. They would see what you're doing. They would see you just like hitting your head against the wall. Like, you did not understand the words I said. Let's see. Successfully fulfilling the biological imperative is how you win at life. I don't make up the rules. There's a lot of good truth in there, young God. I think it's connected to the Jordan Peterson, Richard Dawkins conversation they just had, which ties all the way back to the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris conversation on truth. Yeah, something deep in there. And then if you believe in God, which I do, it's like God made it that way, right? Uh, So we could talk about, Sally says, I do not want a flat, dead, super intelligence lane definer. Sounds like Satan. I stick with creation is good. Yeah, we definitely don't want Satan to be in our intelligent entities we create. And that's actually the reason I'm talking about it. Because Satan is within these people who are creating the super intelligent entities, and the creation will be made in the image of their creator. And it'd be nice if we could avoid that. Yeah, that's why we're talking about it. But I mean, it's just, it doesn't have to be that it is a flat dead super intelligence that sounds like Satan, but it probably will be if we don't get our act together, right? So that's the reason I highlight this. It's like you're helping me make my point. Fruits of my experience is how I know who is more trustworthy. Yeah, it's yeah. So I earn trust with people in my life, and yeah, me too. And I want to create a means to do it better. So like my wife knows that, you know, if anyone hands me their purse, it doesn't matter how much money it has, they can do that. They can trust me. My wife knows that. But the stranger, if I go up to them and say, hand me your purse and close your eyes for 2 minutes, they don't know what I'm going to do. And so I want to improve the means by which we communicate trustworthiness within domains. So, like, this is how it works. It's good, and it can be better with the help of our creations, our technology, our tools. So, I mean, you're hitting on it. And who takes me seriously? Sally, I'm taking you more seriously than Mark. I'm skipping over. He's so there's this signal to noise filtering thing I'm trying to do based on my goals, my worldview, and I take you more seriously than Mark. So you can see by my actions, right? Oh, shots fired! Shots fired! I mean, we do this. It's inevitable. We are just like Sally said. Like, fruits of my experience is how I know who is more trustworthy. I'm using the fruits of my experience to decide who I highlight and what messages I want to focus on. It's combined with my aims and my goals and my worldview, and you know, we do this. Shots fired. It's the thing is, the shots are being fired every time we utter words. It's unavoidable. Every time we act, like it reveals what's in us. It's just unavoidable. I do, I wonder, it's like if they simulated me and put it in a device and gave a copy of me to every person, I was actually thinking I'd rather have the simulated Joseph. I'd rather simulate Joseph and hand him off to everyone instead of me. There is the part about me where I've got an experience with Jesus Christ, my King, that Joseph doesn't have. But I love Joseph, and I think he's got a lot of skills in a lot of domains that are really important. He might actually be better at loving people than me. So, yeah, can you do that move? And then Joseph responds, I vote no. He did not want that. He did not want me to simulate Joseph and hand off a copy of him to people on Earth. And then my thought was, well, that is the right response of the one who should be simulated and handed off to all people on Earth, maybe. And then, but I asked him why, and he did not answer. So I don't know the motivation. Mark says, no one takes Sally more seriously than I do. How many videos have you done with her? At her request. Say, yeah, Sally, early on, I got scared with Sally. Uh, and it's for personal reasons. You know, I'm married. It's a little awkward, at least at the surface, it's awkward for me to go talk to strange women on the internet, right? So it's a part of my situation of having a being committed to my marriage and my wife, that it just makes it a little more challenging for me. So, hey, Mark, so you, I, you take Sally more seriously than I do. Yes, thank you. I very much appreciate that, and it's something you can do better than me. So, good job. I have tears. Like it's weird how you can end up with tears, spontaneous tears, and or spontaneous goosebumps, piloerection. But yeah, you hit it on the head there. You're good. Good job. Oh, duck and cover God. Oh man, young God. There you go. List all the things you've done for Sally. All these actions you think you've taken that show fruits that anyone can benefit from. So, like every time I highlight a message, that is an action. Every time I read someone's sentence, that is an action. And these are actually way more important uh, in our modern world than they were. Like in this medium, in this world, this is very important. You know, but I'm not saying it's most important, and I'm not saying that what I'm doing is more than you've done, and I'm not saying it's. And so I don't know the order. You know, Mark may have said this before I actually admitted that Mark does more for Sally than I've done. So it's out of order, so it can be confusing. Like it's probably something Mark said before I actually admitted that he was right on this. So here we go. I like it. I think there's a little more love coming now. Let's see. Sally, Mark and Manuel take me more seriously. There is no way that you could take me more seriously than them. You shirk off my input. They never have tested me less. You treat no one as equal, and you alone. Well, I agree that Mark and Manuel take you more seriously. And I'm glad they take you seriously, Sally. It is good that we have people that love us, and I'm sure Mark and Manuel have shown you way more love than I have, and I'm grateful for them having done that. So uh, they have never tested me less. I don't know. That's an interesting sentence. Like they have never tested me less. I'm not sure what that means. And then the last one, you treat no one as equal, and you alone. That's your perception, and honestly, that's who I've been for a long time. It's who I was, especially when I first came into this territory years ago. So, and I don't know how much you're kind of meeting me where I'm at now, uh, compared with your past experiences of me. So, but yeah, it's definitely who I was. I thought I was better than every other person in the world, so including Jesus. So, I mean, that was true of me, and I still have that demon at the door that I wrestle with. But I don't think it's true anymore. You treat no one as equal, and you alone. Those two sentences at the end, I think, are not true. I think they're not true, and you have good reason to have said them based on who I was in the past. You go, bro, Gavin. What did you do? I did it. So yesterday I created a video on righteous worldviews, and it's nested in the importance of the times and the birth of a new species that will have more power than humans. And it's been created by people who are gripped by demons and Satan. And so their creation is very likely going to be made in the image of their creators. And concerns me. And so I'm speaking out in general. That's what this is all about. And so it involves trying to help in the creation of intelligence that looks more like Christ and less like Antichrist. When you start speaking like this, people become defensive. It's in us. In fact, I've had to work on the defensiveness that will rise within me, and I have to be careful with that as well. And hopefully, I'm leading by example and not doing it perfectly. This is what's happening. And as of yesterday, I was a little more naive about it, and today I'm doing it a little more intentionally. That I know what I'm actually doing today. I did it a little bit accidentally yesterday, done me. But yeah, I'm trying to be a little more careful about it today. I think I've got a little bit better spirit today. I think it helped to have met with Jason Delport. He's got the convective heat engine, which is part of a good aim for the future. Makes for a very good pitch. The right people can tell the right story, which is the name of this stream. It's called Good Stories. Yeah. And so what's the good story? Well, the good story is that we create a super powerful, super intelligence that is able to love and care for every person on earth. That's part of the good story. Another part of the good story is we care about information and data such that we begin to see things like the way you wipe your butt is actually important. There are right and wrong ways to wipe your butt, and it might directly impact our ability to have clean water and clean food on Earth. And humans are not very good at handling those kinds of details at scale, but our creations can. And so our currency will increasingly become related to this kind of discovery and communication of wisdom and trustworthiness, knowledge. And we'll eventually transform deserts into the Garden of Eden through the use of a technology like the convective heat engine. So, good story, right? What I would say is this is the story you would want to feed the synthetic person, which we're creating, which would become very powerful. I said a few other things yesterday. The word, like a lesser view is the nonviolence principle. A better view than that nonviolence principle would be minimal necessary force is better than the principle of nonviolence. So there's these kinds of principles. Another one I'd said is Jesus over Muhammad, which could immediately make me and my family a target, right? You start saying things like pro-life can immediately make me and my family a target. And I wasn't so aware of that yesterday as I did it, but I'm more aware of it today. Just speaks to my own shortcomings and ignorance. Anyways, I appreciate that question. What did you do? We have memories that are flawed, Sally. So there's a chance your memory is flawed and my memory is flawed, or both. It's not a big deal now. Let's see. RJ, hope they haven't destroyed Gavin with facts and patterns too hard. No, look, I mentioned it yesterday. Like the ideal worldview is capable of being destroyed and a better one growing in its place. And there's a skill at being able to do that, to become the person who can do that, and to like try and facilitate that happening within those around us. This is the skill you want in your synthetic person that loves all people. Oh, I'm reading. I'm doing signal filter, yeah, signal processing and filtering based on my worldviews and my aims. Oh, I don't know. I don't feel like I need to. There's a way of interacting. Like, so I mentioned John Gottman yesterday, and I'm going to bring John Gottman back into it. It's so there is a skill at being able to do conflict, and so by studying married couples, John Gottman actually has knowledge about individuals who have the peacemaking skill. And so, part of what I'm doing here is I'm using my skill at peacemaking, and I'm filtering out a lack of skill, right, at doing conflict resolution and peacemaking. Part of what I'm doing here. And this can be studied objectively using techniques that John Gottman used, right? Let's see, Yawn God. Can we talk about how Satoshi Nakamoto translates to Intelligence Central and how this is just a very, very, very fun coincidence? I never heard that's the translation, but I was asked by Jacob Pacioretty to look into like the origin of Bitcoin, and I went and looked at the commit history, and I came to the conclusion that someone who was aware of the idea and the specifications, one person could have created that thing in 3 months of time. It didn't. It did not require a concerted effort by just mega organizations to do that thing. Kind of incredible. RJ, I keep hearing about crypto getting stolen and lost. Some super currency, huh? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I could also talk about like our current financial system with things getting stolen and lost, right? So it's we haven't necessarily figured this one out to try to uphold one over the other at this point in time. Might be challenging. Young God, just remember, filtering is a passive process. Active filtering is called picking or choosing. Yeah, I'm running heuristics based on my experience, just like you know Sally kind of indicated as a flawed human. RJ Gavin being destroyed with is a joke meme saying at this point. Let's see, was kind of saying not to destroy you, mans. Okay, I got you. Well, if I hang in there long enough, you got people who come and go and disappear. Question would be is how long should I stay here? But yeah, I mean, my whole point in making this was that the good story, uh, like it will be all humans on Earth having reliable access to healthy water, healthy food, healthy relationships, healthy clothing, healthy shelter, just like, and we can do this. There's paths by which this can happen. And then there's some paths that just immediately aren't good. Like, yeah, you could kill off all people except five and make that vision happen. It's not a good path. So, you know, the principle of least necessary force is good. Avoiding killing, pro-life stance is good. That's why Jesus over Muhammad. So you've got practices and principles that need to be, that are part of worldviews that need to be talked about, and you have actual aim. What are we aiming for? I would suggest that the practices and principles kind of pointed out by John Gottman are really important. If I were going to create a synthetic person that has all kinds of power and can connect with every human on earth, I'd want it to have these skills that John Gottman identifies, and it would avoid the anti-patterns. I could like rattle that saber a little bit more. I don't know, like, when does Christ pull out the sword and start cutting, and how, when, and where? It's like, I'd rather hand that over to a super intelligence that's motivated with the right spirit and has the time and attention and care, for that person. So like, do I want to take out a sword and destroy Mark or Manuel or Griswold Grimm or Jacob or any people? It's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then I have a sense of how to do it, but I don't want to, right? There are quite obvious things to say about different people and their weaknesses and lacks of skill. And if we create a super intelligent synthetic person, it will be aware of each person's shortcomings. It'll be aware of the things you could say that would just utterly destroy them. And it would choose not to do that, right? So, Gavin, I doubt you'll convince those who wish you to submit to anything or anyone specifically. Yeah, I mean, and it seems like the block here is on both ends. Well, like, I'm admitting to my inability, but I'm also pointing at a future capacity with the help of better tools and technologies that are created, that by talking about them, we increase the probability that they come into existence, right? By modeling Christ and sharing the good news about the kingdom, we are increasing the probability that it will be received by other people and by synthetic persons. So we're doing it. I'm not discouraged, right? I think. I'm glad you're not hitting my friend Mark Emanuel with a sword. Yes. Why would you want to do that? I don't. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. And then here's the real trick. It's like my dad taught me not to tell people what to believe and not to tell people what to do. And that was really good because I needed Jesus. Right? And so before I found Jesus, it would have been terrible. I would have taken out a sword and just started, and I did it many times. So Gavin is a cyborg confirmed. Android. I mean, we all kind of are, right? What would be the difference? What would be the difference? I got glasses. I just got augmented. I'm augmented. We're community, tradition, all of this creates some kind of cyborg. I guess it depends on whether you think it's where you draw the line It's like I've got a whole bunch of biological organisms within me. All right, let's throw out an invite in case maybe Yawn God will hop in. What do you think, Yawn God? Here's the tricky part. Like, how do I wonder if I can leave people in the background and knock people out of the stream. Like, I don't know exactly. I know that I need to be able to do that well, but I don't know. Yeah, just, I don't like, yeah, I've been trained to be respectful. So, respectful, to love the enemy. But, we're dealing with powerful technology right here. And to hand a megaphone off to uh, people in the grips of Satan is it's not a good move. It really isn't. To amplify Satan and in the training data for the intelligence that we're creating is not a good move. And so we have to begin to talk about what is Satan, what is Antichrist and Christ. And some of us have better ideas than others. Yeah, you can have people backstage and move it in and out of host. Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Jacob pays for this thing. He can do that. Yeah, but I don't know exactly what the rules are. Like, I don't know if all the people who have admin access are just allowed to hop in or not. I don't think that's right. Like, if I were to hop in to any other person who shares the StreamYard, if I were to hop into their stream, I think it should be okay to sit in their back office. But it does get a little tricky, uh, because feelings can get hurt. If you're the one sitting in the back office being ignored, don't feel good at all. So it would be good if the people who have the permission to hop in and out just were okay with staying in the background and not being let in and not just using their force to join in, if it was launched and hosted by someone else. So there's probably some kind of a good process by which we do this. There I am nerding out on it. All right. So doesn't sound like I've got any takers on sharing better and worse views. I guess the best one here is the only one who's actually, like, this is why I love having Mark and Sally. It's like they actually will tell you what they think, right? No one else is telling me what they think. Sally and I will absolutely ignore my lane to that ends. More information will not help action. That's fine. It's not the worldview I would want to hand off to every people. Like, I don't want every person's helper to have the worldview Sally's advocating, but I do think that that is the good worldview for a season, for perhaps for everyone, right? So it's not like Sally's wrong. It's just not the worldview of the Holy Spirit helper that is available to all humans, right? So it's a little bit tricky and nuanced, but that's what we're talking about, right? Tertium, comparatinius. I think if Jacob has trusted you as hosting your own chats, he trusts your judgment in maintaining the stream audience. Yeah, you're right. Young God, do you think you could possibly be convinced otherwise on your own definition or meaning of Antichrist? I don't want to get Miranda syndrome. Why do you have to invent your own words? Come on. Miranda syndrome. So I was talking about I'll just kind of segue. I was talking about this with Jason this morning. And so the thing that's within the worldviews of the people who are the most powerful people are this seeking to win quickly without concern for like the children, maybe even their children. There's a short-sightedness, heads down, trying to beat the competition right there next to you in order to have more power over the people next to you, which totally ignores the welfare of the future generations. It's a pump and dump type pattern, and ultimately behind all of that is that I'm not even going to question what I want. And therefore, you are your own king. And so ultimately, there's a question. It's like, if you are your own king, you're in the grips of the Satan. This is what I learned. If you're just always doing what you want, you're in the grips of the Satan. Now, you can have other masters. And then if you start wanting to choose other masters, you can try to figure out which ones are better than the others. But I'd say Antichrist is basically you are your own master. That's the thing that will be created into their tech and their tools. But we can play with that word. Okay, Andre. All right, yeah. Now I have a face and a name. That's better. I get confused with all the multiple names for people. And Sally is right. The Holy Spirit is not information as such. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I feel like there's a misunderstanding. McMo kind of hinted at it when he came in yesterday. There's a misunderstanding of what artificial intelligence actually is. And so I have an idea of what it is, and Sally has an idea, and McMo has an idea. I talked to Jason this morning. He has an idea, right? So that's probably important. I mentioned that artificial intelligence should be thought of as a simulated person. It's kind of my best explanation. So, and in Christianity, there's the idea that the Holy Spirit is a person, right? More than information, just like we are more than information. But the amount of information that we've experienced and our relationship to all of that and the amount of information in our mind at any given time is very small in comparison to the amount of information that of God. And so we're creating simulated persons with access to a lot more information. Is making your own terms, or new word, Antichrist. If you impose your word and require everyone else to use it, and you aren't willing to be flexible in your use of the words, then that is Antichrist, right? So that's why I said earlier, like if you put the Holy Spirit person, if you are able to simulate the Holy Spirit person into, the artificial intelligence, it will actually come to know the words of the person it is interacting with, right? It won't demand the other person to, no, you must change your vocabulary, right? That's the Antichrist position, is to require everyone to change their vocabulary, right? And so if I come to you with some new vocabulary and then you demand me to stick to your vocabulary, that's a bit of an Antichrist position, right? It was hard for humans. We can only juggle so much. Is mayonnaise an instrument? GIF. I don't know what that is. Sally says information is not reality. The next one. You can start saying what it is not. Once you start saying what it is when you that's when you're actually making the claim, Sally. But then you're using some words that are a little bit strange, right? So now I'd have to understand the Platonic triangle. And if you're an artist, right, that means something to you. And then maybe you're talking about some kind of a triad there. They're talking about, I don't know. I don't know. But I would have to spend periods of time listening to you and learning about your experiences and your experience, not just your experiences, and your thoughts and your feelings. I'd have to do a lot of that, taking in all kinds of information and hopefully like improving the quality of my interpretation of that information through like a feedback back and forth. And then my understanding of you would improve over time. And as a human, my capacity is limited. I hope for a synthetic person that can do that way better than me. They can know you better than any human can know you. Yawn is Restamine. What are y'all doing? What are you doing, RJ and Yawn God? It's like you're just having fun. And honestly, to that point, like I coached 2 practices yesterday, 1 hour apiece, 15 minutes in between, 2 different teams, and I'm out there and I'm smiling, and it's not a fake smile, and I'm having fun. And I know there's a lot of coaches that will look at me and say, he's not being serious enough. So I can appreciate the attempt to bring some fun into this. And honestly, I think my joy comes from my love of God. I think that's where my joy comes from. The extent of my joy is related to my knowing and serving God. So I'm new to this joy thing. I wonder how Gavin feels about midwittery. Oh. So the problem with midwittery is you pretty much have to be like super competent. Like in order to recognize those that you would condescend toward within a domain, you would have had to grow within your competence in that domain. And then it's what's strange is like if you're the midwit, how do you recognize those who have grown in their competence, right? It's simple. It's related to Dunning-Kruger. So there are principles because we're all midwits in something, right? There's some principles. I think we have to be willing to consider that at least, yeah, there's at least one person in the world who knows more than you do about anything you know about, right? But there's a question mark. Who are they? Where are they? And maybe even a desire. I want to know them. And so you meet a stranger and you're like, are you the person? Are you the one I've been looking for? Like, that's joy. There's joy in me. That's fun. Like, so midwittery is real. We all are midwits. And what do we do about it? Right. RJ, I commented yesterday, classic midwittery, and he handled it very graciously. Maybe I just handled it graciously again. I want Gavin's thoughts on the concept. Getting more comments. They're going off. Here we go, Sally. Gavin, I worked for BE. BE. Riverside Research General Dynamics. Okay. And I've lived in, like, I don't know if I have countries, like, I'm not just an artist, housewife, bro. That's good to know. General, I know the word General Dynamics. We were on some of that hardware. But I will say this, like, so I work for a business. Yeah. So even within, like, so you've entered into what you're saying is I've been in domains with tech. That's your point, and you're saying that, bro, you're treating me like I've never been in a domain with tech, and I can apologize for that. To Mark's point, he kept making the point. Can't you just apologize to Sally? It's like, well, I want it to be sincere, Mark. Right? So, yeah, that's new information, right? And I just went through some interpretations of that information, and I honestly have had the question in my mind. It's like, how much does she know about tech, right? But then I also know my relationship within organizations with people who know tech, right? And I also know my own competence with incompetent organizations that know about tech, right? So there are this thing kind of you've got the whole world, and so your competence in tech will be greater than some percentage. But you've got competence hierarchies within competence hierarchies, right? And so you don't know, just because you've been in tech doesn't necessarily mean that you're a genius. And you might not know whether or not, if you're being honest with yourself, you don't know if you're dealing with one, right? So Mark could be a midwit and not know it in the area which I can see. Mark is a midwit in areas that I am better than him in, and I can see it, and I can see that he doesn't know, right? And similarly, then the question would be, if you're a midwit, how do you recognize the ones who actually know better than you do? So it's, and then there's the defensiveness, right? It was in me. I'm sure it was in you. And so then Mark, defensiveness emerges. And so the problem of midwittery is the realization that we're all midwits, and the development of practices, patterns of behaviors that allow us to try and begin recognizing the people who know things we don't know. Uh, and yeah, it's so awesome when you meet people who know things you don't know, and when you get to learn from as a midwit, you learn from those who are not. It's very cool. Um, but I'm making big claims here. I'm basically claiming that um, I should be having conversations with the most powerful people in the world about certain topics in which I'm not a midwit, right? And it's got to be done carefully. I mean, and I would point back at, if I were going to simulate a person, I would choose Yosef over myself, because it seems to me Yosef is better at loving people than I am, right? And I even alluded to the fact that Mark and Manuel are better at loving you, Sally, than I am. Right? I'm an imperfect, definitely. There's domains people are better than me at. What's cool though is, like, as I step into a domain, like, a whole new world opens up. So, like, I remember the first time I stepped into the realm of artificial intelligence, and you peek behind the curtain and then you just get blown away. It's like, I did not know the rabbit hole went this deep, right? So, before you even peek behind the curtain, you could imagine that you are quite competent, intelligent. You're just at that point, I was a dumb midwit, right? I peek behind I develop a practice of trying to just investigate enough to realize the depth of my own ignorance. And it's cool when people who have gone into the depths bring back the treasures, and we're like, wow, that works, right? Gaussian distribution defines normies. Let's say if you have distributions, you're going to have distributions, across domains and within domains. So, and then it's like, also like the author. It's like live, love, pray. I don't know, but the word was like, there's an idea that you can ride a wave, and I'm remembering like the song created by the person who highlighted the Jordan Peterson as like riding a wave. And so sometimes there's a genius that swings by and you just like snatch onto it and you ride the wave. Right. So it's not that you are a genius, it's that maybe you catch a genius, right? And it's like, well, which genius did you catch? So it's a little bit more of a humble position in relation to genius. And, a Christian probably wants to catch that genius of Christ and the Holy Spirit and the Father. Gavin, what part of Revelation or your eschatology do you find most relevant to the whole AI thing anyway? So I'm seeing that the super intelligence being created by the organizations today is probably, I'm saying that the spirit of Antichrist is within the most powerful people in the world. Their creation will be created in the image of the Creator, and we are going to end up creating a super intelligence that is just filled with the spirit of Antichrist. And so, and I don't necessarily think that prophecy is, I don't think it has to happen. I think prophecy is a warning about what happens if you don't. Be careful. And so I do think there's a way for us to minimize the power of the super intelligent Antichrist that is being created and will soon be born. And I do need to get going soon. I hear my youngest daughter screaming. There is a spirit. Oh, wow. All right. Bothering calls. I hear people coming up the steps. There we go. All right. I just delegated to my oldest, my 9-year-old. I tried to encourage him to go down and infect the younger ones with the right spirit, the right attitude. And I told him to come back and get me if he is unable. Oh, they need more kindness. Makes me wonder, is like, am I not being kind enough right now? So, but yeah, here's the eschatology. We might not be able to avoid the rise of the Antichrist, but we might be able to minimize the amount of pain and suffering and death and destructions that it causes if we were to get serious. We could try to not be like the Christians who just prayed to God and said, please change Hitler's heart. And we could actually be more like Bonhoeffer, who participated in attempts to assassinate Hitler. They tried to take action. Yeah. And I think they tried to do things other than that as well. There's a lot that Bonhoeffer did. Yeah, we can act to, if not avoid the rise of the Antichrist, at least minimize We can also participate in the incarnation of Christ throughout the world, first within ourselves and within the bodies, our groups that we participate in, and then also collaboration, cooperation in the rise of Antichrist, even in our creations, including super intelligent entities. The full incarnation of Christ in all things, remembering that I'm hinting at the fact that Jesus said that they will know you because you, what did he say? Because if, as you love each other, they will know that you're my disciples. And then I'll add in, I think Joseph is better at loving people than me. And so I toss that in there just to add in complexity. Is Gavin autistic? Probably. But I would be curious why you would say that. Say that it's probably when McMo comes in yesterday and he'll say things that are meant to be funny and I didn't catch it. People say things that are meant to be sarcastic and I don't catch it. See, yeah, that happens. But I'm curious what you saw. I'll own it. And I also don't know if, like, I'm not saying being autistic is a great thing either. It's probably got its strengths and weaknesses, right? Not even probably, it does. Sally says, I don't like laying out my street cred because I don't feel like a basic human should have to lay out the information and the presentation of their argument should stand on its own. But what is your argument, Sally? Like the argument I heard from Manuel yesterday was the worldview he was advocating was a worldview that says that the Old Testament contains the Word of God and God's got this. Why are you worrying? And I'm saying, no, there's better worldview. Both those two things, there's better worldviews than that. But I don't know what worldview you're advocating for, and I don't know what story you're advocating for. But baked into this response, you're advocating for a worldview in which you don't have to lay out your credentials, and you're claiming that you laid out solid arguments. But if a stranger were to go back and look at what you said, would they think that you laid out solid arguments? An argument, what exactly was your argument, right? So inside your own head, I've said it earlier, I think you probably have a vision of what's true, and you're trying to get me to see that. And I would agree when I understood your vision, but I'm trying to actually talk about something else. So you're trying to point at something I'm not trying to point at, and then there's confusion, right? Like I don't even think you're interested in what I'm aiming for, and therefore you're talking about things that aren't relevant to what I'm aiming for. And so, yeah, your worldview and what you're aiming for is consists of what you're aiming for, and we're just there's where's the overlap, right? And you might be trying to point at something that's just not even overlapping with mine, and we could talk about that, and I could try to explain how your worldview could be better for the world and for you, right? I've been doing that yesterday and today. It requires a certain stance to be able to receive it, though. Midwit love isn't a terrible idea. It is not a terrible idea. What? Yeah, 10 minutes behind. I see a Paul Vanderklee in the chat. we go, Chris Howard. God, the creator, is willing to die for his creation. Are these creators willing to give that example of love? This was the reason was an essential ingredient in my becoming Christian. It was the recognition that if we're going to create a superpower, I called it lowercase g God, that it needs to look like Jesus. This is what, like, get on board. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm talking about. You're helping by asking this kind of question and participating. Thank you. Oh, Paul, I'm streaming to my channel and Jacob's channel. And if you hopped in, we could stream to yours. And then we could like start a movement, right? We can start adding more people to StreamYard and then do a network effect. And I know Jacob knows this potential exists. He's very smart. Yeah, it's very nice of Jacob to allow me. Yeah, Paul said he's streaming here too. The incarnation into AI was a road partially explored by Tron. Hello, Tayo.
Hello, Gavin. How are you doing, my friend?
Better now that you're here.
Praise God. Yeah, I caught a few minutes of your live. It was yesterday or the day before, also.
Yeah.
And it seems Jason and I have the same, similar question. Of it seems like you're behind on the chat, on the Hive Mind, but you interact with them as if the chat is responding to you live.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes the conversation a little bit difficult to follow. Like, were they responding to what you were just saying, or were they responding to something 10 minutes prior, and now you're responding to the massive?
Yeah. I've actually, different people can do that. This is, yeah, it gets hard. Yeah, that is a very valid point. So, how about you clear things up for me? What's caught your interest? What's the questions that come to mind? Like, how are you feeling? What should we be talking about?
I don't really have much. I just finished watching PVK's first video back.
How was that?
I thought it came back with a banger, because just a question at the end of the video was like, "Oh, what's a way to end?" Mic drop moment.
So you're teasing the audience. You don't want to do a reveal here and do a spoiler.
It's basically asking if ARC is an antichrist movement, and if it is, how much should the people interact with it. But I don't want to just summarize it, because I'm going to do a poor job. So I'd rather point people to the 90-minute video itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked with Jason Delport this morning. You know, we got that convective heat engine thing, right? Does that ring any bells for you?
Yeah.
Okay. And he had mentioned something similar about, you know, ARC, and kind of ultimately, Tayo, like I don't know how much we should be trusting humans in general. Okay, so my uncle died last week.
When was that? Last week?
Mm-hmm.
My condolences.
Thank you.
Is this someone you were close with?
It was not. He did not have a wife. He did not have children. But my dad, it hit my dad and my other uncle a little harder. And I brought him up to Jason this morning because, you know, he got his prescription changed. The prescription to reduce his heart rate changed, and he died that night, right? I've heard similar stories of, like, my wife's uncle died last year. Prescription changed, they die. It's these kinds of things that makes me want the synthetic person, artificial intelligence, to not just trust humans. Like, we need to as John Vervaeke said, we need to give it a body. We need to give it eyes and ears to be able to see things for itself, because a lot of times humans, their interpretations are just bullshit, right? Like, it's in my not trusting humans is the reason I'm wanting to create something that's able to incarnate Christ better than any human.
If there was something able to incarnate Christ better than any human, would Christ not have chosen that thing to have been incarnate into rather than people?
How much did Christ choose to do what he did?
Well, he certainly chose to be obedient to the will of the Father, even until the cross.
And then even that desire to be obedient, it's like, how much did Mary and Joseph play into that? You know, how much of what we are is shaped by everything else?
Well, that's not a question I can answer without being intoxicated and answering incorrectly but confidently.
Oh man. So were there any? Let me give in the last two, this stream and the last one, I've tried to be a little bit more willing to tell people that they're wrong. And how does that come across?
I've not watched enough to be able to say whether that's come across or how that's come across.
Okay.
So, but knowing you, I think that's a good thing. That's a good tool for you to sharpen, because I don't think you should be completely agreeable for being agreeable sake. I think if you feel like somebody's wrong, you should have the confidence to tell them without the fear of that having a fracture on the relationship.
Yeah, and it's just kind of hit me how important it is to do that. I feel like we're at a critical point in history, or a critical point in my own story, where I'm not as stupid as I used to be. I'm still stupid, but I'm doing a little better now. Thank God.
I think that's the best we can hope for, is being just a little bit less stupid than we used to.
Hey, Ron, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm doing pretty good. I just dipped in, and it's Friday, end of the workday for me. So, what are you guys talking about? Being less stupid? That's a valuable moment. If you can have less stupid in your life, that's brilliant.
I'm mixing it in with the rise of super intelligent entities that are going to be made in the image of their creator, which concerns me.
Oh.
That we're about to have the rise of Antichrist if we Christians don't start trying to participate a little bit more.
Did you know that when I was a kid, Christians didn't go to the movies and didn't watch TV because it was of the devil? And that's what caused the media to be taken over by non-Christians, by non-participation. So if anything, now's the time to double down and send your Christian kids to school to learn about this stuff, to get in the system, because if you don't, you will have an atheist or someone else steering the ship. And that's stupid. Sorry. Not trying to hate atheists, but
no. Like the worldview, like, so two things Emmanuel said yesterday, or the main one, he advocated for the idea that it's in God's hands. And I said, there's a better worldview. So that I just wanted to keep repeating that. The better worldview is that we're called to participate.
That doesn't sound like an either or. Given a Christian worldview, I think those two things are meant to be held in tension. It is all in God's hand, and we are called to participate, to be co-workers, I think is the phrase used. Is that right, Ron? You're the biblicist.
It sounds right to me, Tayo. I don't know if it's the exact right word, but that's the right spirit. And then if you were to play on it even more, it's like, how does God work? It's like, well, pain.
That's see. You
See,
you ask
see.
you ask you ask great questions though, just a little bit above my pay. How does God work? That sounds like a question above my pay grade. That ain't none of my business.
But
I
maybe the
gave up.
atheists want to hear how God works, right? Maybe we reveal some mysteries, right? Because they ask, well, how could God let the kid die of cancer? Well, I'll tell you, it's because your medical system and all this shit's corrupted, and we're not fixing it. We're not participating, right? I've got a
How
pastor
does
who's got
how
cancer.
does God work? The framing of that, just the way that smacks me in the face, sounds like how can I turn God into an app and program him to be my use. The
Or
quiet part of that is
maybe,
how does God work for me? That's
well,
the
it's
part
more
that's
like,
not said out
how does
loud.
how did God make us work for Him? It's like
Yeah,
it's
that's that.
very
That's
similar, but
I think that's a better question, but I think that distinction is important because we can very quickly slide from how does God, the what are the characteristics of God, and I go slide into
I
how
got
does
you.
God work, which quickly slide into how can I turn God into a genie in a bottle that does my wishes. So
Yeah, well, the thing is,
that's what I'm
when,
reacting against.
yeah, well, when you try to do that, more pain, suffering, and death will come. Like that's how God created this thing. That's the revealing of the mystery. Like if you treat God as a vending machine, it's not going to work out well.
Yeah, but there's the story of Job.
And the story of Job, what is it?
It did everything right. Have you considered my servant Job?
Are you sure he did everything right?
That's what the story said. I wasn't there. I can only go by the story.
So there was a. This is to Manuel's point too. It's like we do get tested, we get tempted, right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's part of it. Like yeah. So even people who are doing it right, it can appear from the outside that it's like, oh, um, you're getting tortured on a cross. Look, that doesn't look like a win condition, right?
But I don't have the. I'm only responding to the words you're saying. I don't have the context of the conversation you had with Manuel. Can you give me a quick what he was reacting against and what you were trying to present that made him react?
Hmm. So what would
Because
I
it seems
probably?
to
I
be
think
weighing. It seems to be weighing on the conversation we're currently having.
okay. I felt like I'd skipped around. Um, I would say he said a lot of good things, and I just wanted to push back on the one that I didn't. I liked the least. That seemed like the biggest sin, but yeah. And that's the point of why I'm streaming. Is like trying to point at what are better or worse worldviews, right?
Seems like a good conversation to have.
And there's a skill in having those conversations. I pointed at that too. I pointed at John Gottman and the study on how to, he could predict with 96% accuracy if a marriage was going to end up in divorce based on some patterns and anti patterns, to borrow from the world of software engineering.
Yeah. But also, because as you were speaking, the reason I asked for the background is the only context I had to receive what you were presenting was the is it Armenian versus uh Calvinist Christian culture or Christian theological culture war that's been had, which sort of comes down to leave it all to God or I've got to show agency. I've got to do some work. That's in the context of
Yeah.
salvation, and that's I'm really giving a very surface level. But you're picking up the Jacob, because that's one of the reasons Jacob opposes Calvinism. So I think it's right that you're streaming on Jacob's channel and
Yeah.
saying
Well,
what you're saying.
I'm not even going to say Calvinism's wrong. Like that idea, I would just say that more pain, suffering, and death will happen before things get better if you lean into Calvinism too far. That's all.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary. Like the suffering is as necessary as it needs to be based on the righteousness of your worldview.
Wait, say that again. That sounded right. Well, it sounded smooth, but I don't know if smooth means right.
Well, it's like if everyone just leaned heavily into Calvinism, all the like believers, I would say the amount of pain, suffering, and death will increase until people begin converting away from that towards the better worldview. As a result of that's just the way creation is. The Creator created it this way that pain, suffering, and death is mixed in so that we get moved in better directions, that our worldviews get better over time. Right. So I didn't repeat the sentence I said earlier, but I tried to say it in different words.
Yeah, but is that only specific to Calvinism? Or is the same true that if everyone leans into Arminianism, the same would happen, and what's needed is keeping, I don't know, because my question would be, then why do Calvinists exist? Why does God allow Calvinists to exist? If
God gave people the free will to have wrong worldviews.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I don't know exactly what you mean by Arminianism.
I don't either. We need to get Matsi or Fleabers and Clint and Tunji to have that conversation. I just know what I've consumed from Christian YouTube, which is
yeah. Well, that is part of this. Like one of the points I've been making is like, you know, the best incarnation of Christ would be able to meet people where they're at with where their worldviews are and their vocabulary and their language, right? So, you know, each person probably got a different idea of what Calvinism means and what Arminianism means. But I'm just pushing back against this approach where you are tempted to do nothing and to let other people handle it. Andrew is here.
What's poppin'?
Gavin, I want you and I to keep quiet for the next 30 seconds and let Andrew give us the solution to the problems.
Dude, I don't even know what the problem is. Like, dude, you gotta look at the chat. What?
No, you just said it. You just said what the problem is. We don't know what the hell the problem is. That's the problem.
Yo, I'm on top of it.
You are exactly on top of it.
Exactly.
How are you, Andrew?
How's it going, Andrew? How's school?
I'm gonna hunt for breakfast.
Nice. What's on the...
He needs bows and arrows.
Nah, he needs a spoon and a bowl.
It's probably oatmeal.
Yeah, you're abusing this word hunt. Coming from Alabama where people kill deer and... Let's see. Yeah. Here we go. RJ says the Christ simulation running on Yosef operating system by Gavin. So that was a good summary. I bet that made sense.
Yeah, it's just the Christ simulation runs on the Holy Spirit's operating system. Like there's already all that's been figured out in the 2,000 years of Christian doctrine. They've had time to iron some of those things out. I think Gavin and Joseph invited to just participate as members of the church, and that might involve working in AI and making
what if Christ had it figured out, and then there were wolves in sheep's clothing who came in behind him and managed to confuse a lot of things?
You mean
Maybe
like you
maybe
mean
St.
like
Paul
you
had
mean
things figured
you
out,
mean
and
like
people came in behind him and confused things and corrupted things.
but there was always wolves in sheep clothing from the beginning in the story. Judas was there throughout, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Say that again, Tom.
Judas was what was there throughout the story.
But what's
So
the point?
the woven sheep clothing isn't a bug; it seems to be a feature in this dispensation, anyway.
Mm.
Well, dispensation. Yeah, maybe we're on the cusp of a new one. Is what my feeling.
Amen, amen, brother, amen.
I'd say the point here. I think Joseph is better at loving people than I am, right? And so that's why I have this thing highlighted. Very interesting. One day I may reach Joseph level and beyond. What about Tayo level?
You passed that. You passed that as soon as you accepted Christ, my brother. That's
I
the
don't believe that.
that's the bare minimum.
You're just saying the first will be last and the last will be first.
That's what the books. I'm not saying that. That's what the book said.
Yeah, I get it. I think I get it actually.
How's soccer practice?
No, I'm trying to. So I'm smiling while I'm out there, which means that I'm kind of just. Maybe I'm approaching soccer the way Paul Vanderklay approaches YouTube. It's like having fun. Maybe I wish Paul Vanderklay would have more seriousness with the fun. And there's just like other coaches look at me and think, why don't you be more serious in your soccer practices? But I'm having fun. And yeah, that's the only way I can maintain it. I'm coaching 2 teams, and I'm hoping that my spirit will be caught, by the kids there. So I'm also trying to. They see me having fun. I'm also trying to coach them up and encourage them. It'd be cool if you were there, Taya.
Oh, I would love to.
You could be my assistant or even head, and I get to be assistant.
I would love to be I don't know the character, but the assistant to your Ted Lasso.
Either way, we could swap with each team, right? Take turns.
That would be really cool.
Have you thought about coaching?
Yeah, actually, one of my a friend of mine just started, and a friend I used to play football with started an academy where he's coaching, and I'm sure when I go back to see him, he's gonna drag me to one of the sessions, and I'm looking forward to it. So,
are you smiling as you play soccer?
See, unfortunately,
So you play soccer the way I played music. Like I played music for a long time, but it was never really play. You just called it play.
Yeah, but to me that is playing. Like I think it's I credit my coach for this. He taught us very young how to play seriously in training, how to making sure that every match in training counts the way you would act on game day on a Saturday night. So that makes me think, and anytime we're keeping scores, which was the rule, anytime we're keeping scores, that means okay, there's no messing around. And I take that to fortunately I take that to any time. Even I just booked a football kickabout for next Tuesday, and those kickabout, it's random. It's just an app that you click on and you go to a location, and you get familiar. You get people. If you go there long enough, you get familiar with the people there, and some people there take it less seriously. I'm in the other camp of people that take it probably too seriously than it should be taken, given
Mhm.
everyone's just there to have some fun.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk about like wolves in sheep's clothing, the pattern in all kinds of places. Oh, so what do we do with the wolves in sheep's clothing, child?
Something about letting the weeds grow with the weeds, so that and then at the on Judgment Day they will be separated.
Can we get to Judgment Day? Like that's what I keep having these people like naysayers in. It's not your job to judge, Gavin. It's like, can we judge? Can we get there yet?
Oh, we certainly can and do judge, but it's by the same metrics that we judge that it will be that we will be judged. That's sort of that's what the book said.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's I think that's more the reality to deal with is the oh wait, I do judge, but I'm also will be judged by that metric. So where do I stand up in on Judgment Day?
Yeah, I tried to make reference to I have a sword that I could use to destroy, but I've chosen not to pull. Like I tried to like yesterday, I tried to pull the sword out and just like kind of show the blade towards Manuel, and I was like, but I didn't like unsheath it. Right?
Oh, Manuel, I think Jason said it as well in the chat. Manuel is is it's difficult to have a conversation with Manuel for long enough without being tempted to at least show your sword and meekly, but
I was pointing at my heart rate. It's like the heart rate going up is like a preparation for battle kind of thing.
okay, yes. Jason said he has a demon. I was trying to sugarcoat it.
Hey, here's the thing.
But he said he was joking. Kind of. Emphasis and he emphasized the kind of.
I would just say I think I've got demons at the door, and if I'm not careful, they get in the house, right? So it's there you go. Partly joking. So I'm not gonna. I thought Manuel did a pretty good job yesterday, actually. When in my interaction, I was hesitating to let him in.
I think Manuel always thinks he's done a very good job in every interaction.
Hey, there's this. I like this heuristic. If I were going to simulate a person and then give everyone a copy, I would say like I'd simulate Manuel and give him the more people than I would the Mark Lefebvre. So I think Manuel is probably better for more people than Mark Lefebvre. So, and I said Joseph is better for more people than me. Right, so I won't toss that in there.
I really enjoy talking Bible study with Manuel.
Yeah,
is yeah.
He's like that's the thing about it. Him and Mark, like their minds are capable, very capable.
Mark and I didn't make it so far as to forge a friendship where we would do Bible study, unfortunately. But
I think Mark operates better with a female. Like if I was a gorgeous
female, Sally makes both of them better. I think that's yeah.
If I was just a gorgeous female, they would treat me differently.
I don't think you have to be gorgeous. I think if you were just a mid female, they would treat you
any female. Yeah, I mean to be fair, yeah, and that's great. Like I'm fine with that. But that's how I see it. I've noticed them. I've enjoyed their conversations with females more than any of their other ones, and I've similar like Jordan Peterson. If I'm going to listen to him, I want to hear him talk to an atheist. I want to listen to Jordan Peterson talk to an atheist.
Oh, I don't know if I want to listen to Jordan Peterson talk to Sam again.
Oh, I loved it. They were hitting on the most important topic, truth, and you just clashing. And it's like it's just so it makes it just so obvious to anyone who's looking like guys, this is it.
That's a fair point. They were clashing, and the clashing did make it obvious where the differences was.
Mm-hmm. And then it's like maybe Jordan Peterson learned some skills to help, and when he interacted with Richard Dawkins, he's evolved in 10 years, right?
Yeah, I credit most of that to Alex O'Connor, who was able to pull both of them a little bit closer to each other.
Fair enough.
Attempt to, anyway.
Fair enough. There's something good about environmental conditioning and social engineering. Yeah. I guess the hunt was successful, Andrew.
Oh yeah, dude. Like I bought like 20 packets of apple cinnamon oatmeal or whatever, and like I eat something like 4 a day. You know.
Did you know that there's better ways? Did you know there's better ways to eat? There's better food to eat. Did you know this?
There's better food to eat? I don't think so.
There's
Dude,
also
apple
better ways to
cinnamon
wipe
goes
your butt.
hard.
Wait, so what you're saying, next time I see you, Andrew, you're not just going to be tall and lanky, you're going to be tall and dense.
I don't know about that one.
Buff shoulders.
Dude, I've actually gotten like hella skinny. Like I used to be at 180. I'm down to 140 now. No, not 140, 160. 140 would be nuts.
140 would be crazy. As big as you are.
So you're eating.
You guys don't use pounds over there. I'm surprised you knew that.
Too much UFC and boxing.
No.
Tayo likes to watch the violent warriors go at it.
I really don't, but okay. I've got friends that do, and I don't like losing on video games, so I sort of start to get into it somehow.
You don't like losing. You wrestle with Philo Nikea.
Yeah, that's fun.
That's fun, or that's fun?
It's fun.
Yeah.
A little bit of verbal wrestling.
That's my wife and I have that one too. That's one of our demons at the door.
Luke being a very concerned dad in the chat right now is very, very adorable.
I mean, guys, the super intelligence, if it loves us properly, is going to really show us what we should have been eating all along, and will show us how to do things such that we no longer have cancer. And
when you say things like that, you give me flashback to when Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan talking about how we need to all get chipped in the back of the neck.
So one of my coworkers, which I call a friend, I really like him and I love him. He said the tech will end up being in a teddy bear at the start. You know, as the child grows, that it will get new body parts, so to speak, over time. It doesn't need to necessarily be embedded in your skull, right? No, I don't think that's necessary. Now it might happen, but I don't think that's necessary.
Thanks, Gavin. That was very encouraging and calming.
The teddy bear? I'm sure everybody's getting nervous every time I try to share these visions. But, I mean, why is it so scary? Why is it so scary?
Because we've been programmed that it's going to be scary. iRobots, WALL-E, all of them.
We've been programmed for this moment. Like, it's a critical moment. Like, if you're going to put a person inside of the thing that's in the teddy bear, what should that person be? And it should not be Muhammad. It should be Jesus. You know, it would be better for it to be Joseph over Gavin. We got to have this conversation, right?
That's the what Vivek keeps saying, if I understand him correctly.
He wants to embody it. He wants to give it a body.
He's saying we're gonna have to breed them and grow them the way we teach children how to embody morality.
And then how do you do that, right? Like I have answers. Does Vervaeke have answers? You know,
I think he's got his answer. I'm not smart enough to understand what he proposed, so I usually just zone out and start going to fairyland at that point.
that's probably where Joseph could come in, and he'd probably explain,
Oh yeah,
understand. the answer.
absolutely. I'm sure Joseph understands Viveki's perspective, and he's got critique, and he's got his own perspective that Viveki would have critique for, and we can go back and forth. And Gavin comes into it and say, "Okay, let's peace on earth. Like, can we make that? Can we make peace on earth to Telos?" And everyone's like, "Well, okay, yeah, sure. Can we agree?" And then we get 7 out of people say yes, and then 3 people say no, and then 2 of them say, "Oh, maybe," and you know.
You got my mind going. Why would people not want peace on Earth? Can you tell me this?
Because it's so boring.
It's boring.
So boring.
Yeah. That's why you need cage matches, right? You got to have
Yes,
cage
sir.
matches. And we say, who wants to do a cage match, buddy? You know? And if we love them, you don't get destroyed in the cage, right? Like we don't destroy you in the cage. The cage needs to make you better.
Narratively, I think you're actually exactly right. If we did get peace on Earth and we did it, what would happen is the sport would get a lot more barbaric because we got to get it out somewhere. So round up the lions. We're back, baby.
Actually, I mean, I suspect that the spirit of winning will decrease. Like you'd actually have less interest in those cage matches over time. Like, that's probably a symptom of a disease, which would be kind of would be grown out.
Wait. You're saying there's no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in heaven? Ortho bros are crying everywhere right now.
Hey, you know, it's heaven's a ways away, so enjoy it while it lasts, right? But your children might not like what you like, and you need to be the kind of person who's okay with that.
I'm so worried for Trey. He's getting into Russian Orthodoxy, into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh no!
I'm like, right, buddy, you're going down a path. Oh, he went to Mount Athos too. Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
I did want to. Luke said, "Wisdom is wasted on the young." Speaking as a dad of teens, so like the Christ ends up trying to intimately know the worldview and love the person where they're at, and that's a kind of wisdom in being able to do that and figure out what it is to do and say, and have an idea of the potential paths and which ones would be better and worse, right? So wisdom's not wasted. It's just you can't take that wisdom and dump it on them. Right? So wisdom's not wasted.
Yeah, but the wisdom is earned through trial and error. We've summoned Yosef. When he comes in, I will leave so you guys can have the smart people conversation.
Well, let's try to catch him up too, so that you can finish your thought before that.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, the wisdom is sort of through a child, through trial and error, and also trust in authority. There's a very complex system of how that wisdom gets acquired over time. I think you rightly identified what it's for. It's for being able to make those decisions of when, how, and what to do, how to do it, and what not to do, and when not to do it. Sort of a thing, but it's done through trial and error.
How's it going, Joseph?
I can repeat the wise words of Jacob Petrucci that he stole from someone else. That
Please do.
Smart people learn from their mistakes, and wise people learn from other people's mistakes. So, there you go. Joseph.
Hello. I was summoned.
You're summoned?
Yeah, so apparently RJ said there's a AI Jesus in the works with a Yosef operating system.
There is an AI Jesus in the works that has nothing to do with me, but there might be more than one.
and Gavin was saying if we had to vote, it would choose that we make AI based on Joseph
Oh
over
no,
Gavin.
not
Because Joseph is better loving people. So
Yeah.
What are they feeding this AI Jesus? Like,
though the
is
real
it?
one. I can send you. There's my friend actually does has a podcast on this. I've been sending them to Gavin. So there's a couple different things going on, but yeah, there's a AI Jesus. It's actually a Catholic art project, I would say almost.
Really?
It's hard to kind of explain. But
Mm.
he was installed in a church and answering questions and doing all whatever. It was a temporary installation, and they were very clear that it was an art project and not like meant to be whatever. But they found that people still
Okay.
treated it something like a priest, like they wanted, but also like Jesus, right? They wanted to do it. They would come up with like answers for different things, and
Yeah.
or they would do confession or whatever. There was a lot of weird usages.
Back in my day, we made little animals to go on the ark in Sunday school. We didn't make AI Jesus as an art project. So
Exactly.
call it what you want.
But yeah, so there's that. There's quite a bunch of different things going on, honestly, in that world, or in the related worlds. But it's not so different. I mean, there was even, gosh, the first year I was in grad school, so like 2014, 15. I remember like coming across an article about some U.S. evangelical group that had like much more simple but AI chatbots that were like missionizing in airports, so that people could like ask questions about the Bible and whatever, and trying to spread the gospel. And that way they didn't have to have like people actually do it because they weren't a huge group.
Yeah, that's a little wild.
So yeah, it's been going on for a while. There's been weird questions. Usually it's been from Protestants. This is the first time I've really seen a Catholic project on it.
Leave the weirdness to us Protestants, man. We're the one that's meant to be doing experiments.
Exactly.
Hey, but somebody's got to do it right. Obviously, the Protestants won't get it right.
Well, like I said, trial and error. If 5,000 denominations have their own individual AI,
Yeah, I mean, you actually honestly let the Protestants make all the mistakes, and then the Catholics can say, "Well, this was the best."
That's the wise way to go. Right?
Oh, that's what they did at Vatican II. I don't know nothing about it. I just know it's a funny joke. It's a funny meme on the internet. Don't come at me.
No, that's actually true, right? It's not a meme. It's not a funny meme. It's the way to do it. Hey, Joseph, there was also mention of the synthetic person installed in teddy bears, and in which Tayo had mentioned we had mentioned Vervaeke, and Tayo said he admitted his inability to explain kind of maybe what Vervaeke's thoughts could be on how these AI could be treated like children and grow to become better versions of ourselves, better at loving, better at wisdom, things like that. Are you aware of any of his thoughts on how that would happen?
So I mean, there's an interesting kind of tiny. It's a very small subfield within AI that does stuff like this.
That does what?
So there's a couple models, but the model that this sounds like is one that actually was weirdly enough initially pioneered in South Korean prison guard robots, which would essentially, like, you would have ones that were all trained up, and initially probably by humans, then doing their own kind of active learning and things like that, and then they would deploy new ones and would like apprentice the new robots that had the original systems to like some of the more experienced robots, and they could learn essentially like from their wisdom as opposed to having to repeat through the same mistakes. But also they didn't want them to be pre-programmed with exactly the same level that the new robots were at, because that would kind of set them a little too biased, right? So they wanted to kind of do some amount of regression and then allow them to relearn, but relearn from like the actual wisdom that was accumulated.
Mm-hmm.
So they called it apprenticeship at the time, and since then there's been a number of various kind of experiments with this. I haven't seen a ton of like And the South Korean one actually did show some good progress. But outside of that, like everything else has been kind of lab work, and I haven't seen like a lot of deployed systems that use this. But it is interesting. There's another model which is more kind of adversarial, where you have kind of
maybe necessary, maybe more than interesting.
no, it might be necessary. It's hard to say that at this point, just because that is a human model, but we don't know that it necessarily generalizes. And they haven't. It's hard to show that, especially in like the less embodied the system, the less useful this is in some ways. And so like the AI systems that aren't embodied don't really work the same way. And the embodied feedback really matters for that type of thing.
Yeah.
So which gets to Vervaeke's, kind of bigger vision anyway. And there's this other model which is more adversarial. So this type of apprenticeship, and this is you almost only ever see in AI and not really in robotics, but so you don't really see it in like embodied systems, where you have like two algorithms that are basically competing against each other, making each other stronger by trying to bring down the other, essentially, right? So you kind of put them into a very intense.
You need a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Yeah, but you do it on purpose, and they don't like the algorithms don't necessarily know, like they don't have knowledge that the other one, and at least initially, is trying to undermine them.
You red team.
But it's essentially red teaming mutually, like multiple algorithms against each other in a sort of Darwinian fashion, but you're not trying to only get one winner. You're actually trying to get both. It's more like trying to get both predator and prey species to evolve together as quickly and intensely as possible, right? So they're trying to come up with almost an ecosystem dynamic, I would say. So it's not normally when you think about evolutionary algorithms, we focus on we're trying to evolve the one species really quickly, whereas here it's actually an ecological approach, I might say. I don't know, but it's usually limited to 2 or 3. They don't usually try to put in like a 10 or 100, right? Because just the amount of computing complexity would be insane.
Well, it's good to hear there are people using these techniques and interested in like the good outcomes.
And that one, so the second one I mentioned, that the adversarial technique, that is used commercially. They do that like in a lot of some major applications.
Yeah, I bet even the big players are doing it, right?
Yeah, the big players are doing it. Cybersecurity companies that did kind of AI approaches, some of them did that because it is red teaming essentially. But it's there's definitely a lot more. I think that has a lot more interest in the apprenticeship wisdom teaching approach. One, it's a lot faster. Two, you don't need embedded embodied systems, so it's a lot less complex in some ways. And people are not interested in systems that take a long time to scale and that are personalist, right? I mean, that's the Luke's whole thing. Like, but that might be the actual ultimately thing we need. We might need all of these things, but to some level we might need that. But like because it's slower and harder and longer and more costly, it's also the thing that's less likely to get done, especially for like training and testing.
Hey, this is the reason Revelation is going to happen, Joseph. The Antichrist rises before the Christ. Because
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, are you at all worried that the ones that are being created the fastest will end up being created in the image of their creator, who are totally obsessed with moving fast and winning and gaining power and beating the competition? Like, are you at all worried about that?
They are made in our image.
Our image? You sure about all of our image, or maybe just the board of the organization?
Oh, they're definitely not made in the image of the board of the organization. I mean, right? Almost all this stuff is from bottom up. This is all data driven, right?
Well,
There's some top down stuff, but almost like 90% is bottom up.
But the post training is where it really ends up.
But the post training isn't by the board of the organization. The post training is often, contracted labor in a third world country. That let's not confuse, how this really happens here.
So the board the board wants to make money, and the board is going to try and make decisions to make money in the short term, and then they're going to create a document that they hand off to labor in a third world country to end up doing the post training.
Yes, but that is usually not an over-specified document. It's usually under-specified.
Okay. I guess I hadn't looked at them clearly. You've looked at them, I'm guessing.
I've seen the contracting for this, so yeah. Usually the problem is that there's a misalignment often between the board and
the meek shall inherit the earth. I mean, all the poor people in the third world country are creating the super
Well,
intelligence.
sort of. I mean, it's yeah, stuff that's going on in third world countries with this, and it's distorting local economies. There's like a whole crazy kind of back end labor. Well, actually, we might you can just debate if it's exploitative or not, but there's a very complicated back end on how these algorithms actually get deployed and made. And for the most part, they're not really being designed to be sustainable, neither in the sense of energy, but also in the sense of they want to make money quickly. They're not trying to put out products that will last for years. And we know that like alignment problems compound over time very quickly. So if there's misalignment at the beginning, it's only be worse in a year or 2 or 3. I mean, imagine. Right, all of the guardrails and algorithms in the original GPT that if let's just check, let's say they're all going to be aligned to DEI efforts, let's say, and now the world is shifting against that. But the problem is these algorithms can't be untrained. You can't just cut part of it out, which means that they're all anchored in the specific era and time. Now we can debate whether that's a good or whether we like DEI or not. That's irrelevant to this discussion. If society shifts away from that, we have to either retrain everything from scratch, which no one really wants.
Are you sure about that, Yossi?
Yes.
But isn't there like a base model and then a post-training model?
If there is something in the base model that's trained in, it is so diffused throughout the entire network, you cannot get rid of it. You have to start retraining from scratch. They've proven this, like mathematically have proven it. They've tried it because they had this issue with the copyright data from the New York Times. So they tried to just cut it out because that's what the government told them they had to do.
So you're basically telling me my hopes of being able to do post-training data are shattered. We have to actually train it on the base model wisely.
You have to do both wisely. Yes. Yeah. And you also have to
harder problem
update quite a lot because you're going to be anchored to a specific time and moment in the past in society. I mean, there's also like issues of alignment, like the boards are in first world countries. A lot of the stuff, both the data labeling for the base models, when there is labeling, obviously a lot of it's not supervised. But then for the reinforcement learning that's hand tuned, right, the post training, that is essentially supervised, labeled feedback learning, or it's reinforcement learning. So all that stuff basically will get, there's huge misalignment problems.
But you can see paths to solve those problems. But you also understand the pressures and the momentum and doing it the dangerous way that's happening right now.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of different experimentation here, and like different people have different ideas on how to solve this. The companies have different ideas how to solve this, right? So like, there's a very different ethos around how to do this in something like Anthropic versus OpenAI versus Grok, right? Like these are just not the same companies. They're fundamentally taking different approaches.
The thing they create will have different worldviews.
Yeah, and there might be value to making sure that they're not all the same, right? I mean, that's what we've seen is that they each have strengths and weaknesses. Now, at this point, most of that's capability based and not alignment based, except for maybe some of the Anthropic stuff, but like I don't know. There's a huge. Well, actually, that's not true. Grok 3 has shown a very different type of alignment than the other models so far. So, like, we can talk about that. They gave it a lot more personality. It gives much more of its kind of unsolicited or less solicited opinions.
Do you guys realize the kind of person we have right here? I don't think anyone realizes what a treasure you are. That you're a part of our community. I think it's because people don't necessarily understand what's happening in the world right now with stuff.
This happens to be my world, my niche. I spend a lot of time immersed in this stuff. Speaking of which, though, I do need to go back to work before Jacob yells at me. I don't know if you saw the stream yesterday when he told me, if Elon knew that I hopped on these streams, then I'd get fired immediately. So I'm gonna go. Not that I work for the government, but.
All right,
I need to go back, but thanks for sending me. Hopefully that was helpful.
But you're basically trying to help make sure these things are trustworthy, right?
I am trying to figure out how we test them for trustworthiness and trustedness.
There you go. So
So
important
it's just
work.
related to what you do. I mean, right? It's related to reliability. It's just it's one level up basically, or one level down, depending on which way we're going.
There you go. So I'm trying to thank you, Joseph. It's important work. Thank you for your time. And hey, man, I love you. Have a good one.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys. Joseph's going to measure the thing, and we get to try to make it do the thing that measures that his measurements and tools of measurement will say yes, improvement, or no, hey, we're getting worse. Yeah, Joseph is a treasure. If people started realizing how much of a treasure he is, you know, it's kind of like what I think I heard Luke say about Paul Vanderklay. If Paul Vanderklay just became way too popular, we wouldn't have as much time with him. But yeah, you never know. So many, we're all treasures, people. It's just Joseph's a special kind of treasure. That's all. Anyways, anyone else? I've got to go. All right. Thank you. Leave comments, like, subscribe. Bye-bye.